Good evening.
Good evening.
When I was 7 years old, I ran my 10-year-old sister over with a riding lawnmower. Think about that, a riding lawnmower. But before I go on, one, she was not seriously injured. She's very much alive today. And two, it was completely accidental. But really, I learned something just a month ago that is the true tragedy of that story, and I'll explain later. But growing up, I loved my grandfather, as many of us do. I admired him. He was an honorable man. And every time going to his house, it was always a fun time. And he gave me the best presents. I caught my first fish with him, and we would go on road trips. And of course, your grandfather's always someone you look up to. And to me, he's the best person in the entire world that I'll ever know. Well, growing up, he lived in a small town called Pahokee. And if you've ever heard of it, it's just a small town next to Lake Okeechobee. It has a whole bunch of mosquitoes. It grows corn. A lot of good NFL players come from there. It's really random. But my grandfather lived there, and he owned a chicken restaurant there. Well, on it, he had a huge plot of land. It was about a football field big. And of course, he cut the grass, so he had lawnmowers. But those lawnmowers, when the grandchildren were over, they were our play toys. Because he put it in a lower gear, and he'd raise the propellers, and we just ride them around for hours and hours. And it was just a thing of my youth. Well, on this particular day, my brother was on the sleek green John Deere, and I was on the old red clunker. And we're riding around, and naturally, what boys are going to do, they're going to try to run into each other and hit each other. So we're trying to provoke each other. And of course, we're doing something that's reckless and something that we shouldn't be doing, but we're doing it anyway. And my sister is mounted on the back of my brother's lawnmower. And we're riding around, and maybe 10 minutes in, she's had enough of it. She's exhausted her riding adventures. So she jumps off. My brother brakes, she jumps off. But I'm in the rush, and I'm trying to get my brother back, and I'm trying to provoke him. And I'm only 7 years old. So it happens. I hit her, just like that. And I run her over, and she's submerged under me. And I try to recall the thoughts, the feelings that I had during this time, and honestly, life just froze. Everything kind of stopped. I remember the swift motion that it was. I remember it feeling like there was a vacuum under me that just sucked her in, because one moment her person was there, and then the next she disappeared. Well, when I came back to reality, I shut off the roaring engine. I jumped off. My brother rushes over. He lifts the lawnmower, and in a peculiar fashion, a little girl appears, unscathed, with nothing but a scar. I don't know how it happened. I try to recall it in my mind over and over. How is it possible that nothing worse happened to her? But thankfully, nothing did. But the damage had been done, and obviously, I got screamed at by my parents. We were both being reckless. And obviously, it's a story that I could retell, and it's crazy to think that I really ran her over. And it's something that she can obviously check off or check her bucket list. But the real tragedy of that day was not me running my sister over. It was something much, much worse. It was upsetting my beloved grandfather. You see, I already told you that I admired him and I loved him. And he did everything for his grandchildren. His affairs, his money, his business. It was all to provide for his family and his grandchildren. And he was a man that never got upset. He never got upset. And he's the kind of person that when you get them mad, it's that much worse, because there's someone that doesn't usually get mad, so you realize that you've done it. And I'll never forget the stoic expression on his face, the feeling of disappointment. And that was the worst of feelings. And the story for me got worse just a month ago, because we're recalling it as a family, and in disbelief, 10 years later, or 20 years later, we still can't believe it. But my mom mentioned something that I didn't know, that she can only recall 2 times in her life that she saw my grandfather upset. And the first time was on her 16th birthday, my grandfather gave her a brand new yellow Toyota Corolla. And on the first day driving around, she smashed the back bumper. So she brought it home, and she shows it to my grandfather. And she brings him to the back bumper. And all he does is, and then walks away. But like I said, he's someone that doesn't get upset. So that was already, you already knew you did something wrong. And the second day was when I ran my sister over with a lawnmower. So as the grandchild, the 7th grandchild, I go down as the only one to ever upset her grandfather. And even though it's a funny story now, and thankfully my sister did not get seriously injured by some miracle, it's a memory that I cherish to this day. Because like I said, I loved my grandfather, and it's something that reminds me of that man. Someone who I admire, and someone who I want to be like when I grow up. So that's my story. Thank you for listening.